The village slept under a thin crescent moon, but Amelie could not. She sat by the edge of her hut, the smoke of her grandmother's herbs curling into the night air. Each scent of crushed root, of burning bark, told her the world was listening, the wind, the soil, even the crooked forest beyond the river. Her hands rested lightly on the worn mat, her fingers brushing over the small beads her mother had left her. Protective charms, nothing more than faith and memory. Word had begun to slither through the village like a snake. Crops had failed for 3 seasons. Chickens dropped eggs with blood in the shell. Livestock sickened and died, and no healer could explain why. Though Amelie had worked quietly, tending wounds and guiding the sick with her grandmother's recipes, whispers grew into murmurs and murmurs into accusations. Tonight, those whispers turned into action. A child had vanished near the forest edge, leaving only small footprints in the mud. Parents ran in panic. The village council convened under the largest baobab, its trunk twisted like the spine of an ancient dragon. Flames from torches painted the elders' faces in gold and shadow, revealing fear that had hardened into conviction. "They say she calls the winds, Amelie," one elder said, voice trembling. "She poisons our water and rots our fields. She has done this." "She is a witch," another cried, slamming a fist against the council's table. The sound reverberated like a drum in the still night. "If she is not punished, the curse will fall on all of us." Amelie's grandmother stepped forward, her cane tapping softly against the earth. "You are blind with fear," she said, voice quivering. "My granddaughter heals, she does not harm. Do you not see the truth before you?" The council ignored her. Fear is louder than reason. Before Amelie could respond, men approached with iron-bound ropes and salt sprinkled along the fibers, a binding to suppress what they believed was her magic. Amelie's calm face unnerved them. The younger women watching whispered among themselves, but even their voices faltered. As Amelie was dragged to the village square, she passed homes where children hid under beds, their wide eyes reflecting torchlight. Mothers clutched their babies so tightly the infants' cries became muffled, small as whispers. The path through the village seemed unnaturally long, lined with fearful stares and shadows that danced as if alive. The priest, robed in crimson and white, chanted prayers to justify what they were about to do. Amelie met his eyes, calm but firm. "What you call witchcraft," she said, voice clear and steady, "is life itself. Take care, for hearts that are ripped cannot be silenced." No one heard the meaning behind her words. The ritual began. Amelie was struck down, the iron-bound ropes cutting into her skin. In the dim torchlight, her chest was opened, her heart removed in the village square. A cruel act intended to end her life and her spirit in one stroke. The crowd gasped and shuddered, yet relief spread quickly. The danger, they thought, was over. But relief turned to unease. Even as they exhaled, a faint thumping began. It was rhythmic, slow yet unyielding. The elders froze. "It cannot be," one whispered. The sound seemed to come not from Amelie's body, it had been taken, but from the walls of the council hall itself. Her grandmother screamed, collapsing to the dirt, clutching her hair. The heart, it beats. She could not comprehend how a heart, stolen and buried, could continue to live. A chill swept through the village square. The torches flickered as if moved by unseen hands. The walls of the hall groaned and creaked. Small cracks appeared, faint at first, like lines drawn by a trembling hand. From within those cracks came a deeper, more insistent thump, steady and alive. Amelie's eyes, though no longer fully part of this world, seemed to burn in memory and in story. Her lips moved, forming words none could hear, but the meaning seeped into the villagers' hearts. Hearts that are pure, even taken, will find their way. Night deepened, the wind rose, and the village seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the council hall, the heartbeat pulsed, patient and eternal. And though the villagers tried to convince themselves it was imagination, no one could deny it. A life, stolen, continued its rhythm in the very walls that had witnessed the crime. The square emptied, the torches guttered, and silence fell, but the heartbeat remained, slow, deliberate, waiting. Cliffhanger. That night, the council hall creaked and groaned as if breathing, and deep within the walls, a heartbeat continues, unyielding, aware and watching. The council hall had been sealed with mortar and iron the following morning, but the heartbeat refused to stop. It pulsed beneath the plaster and timber, a steady rhythm that echoed faintly into the ears of anyone who lingered too close. At first, the villagers blamed the wind or the settling of the old building, but even those who knew the sounds of earth and storm could not explain the unmistakable thump, deliberate, unrelenting, like a drum of warning. By midday, strange things began happening. Birds that perched on the roof fell dead without reason. Windows rattled in silence. Pots of water left on the stove bubbled and hissed, spilling over as though boiling from some unseen heat. The villagers whispered that Amelie's spirit had grown beyond her body, and the heart they had stolen was no longer bound to her chest. It had taken the house itself as its vessel. Children were the first to notice the patterns. Tiny hands pressed to walls in fascination. They swore they could hear the heartbeat speaking in a language older than words. "It's telling secrets," one whispered. "I think it knows everything." Adults shushed them, but deep down even the elders could feel it. A presence watching, judging, waiting. Amelie's grandmother, frail but unbroken, knew the truth. She touched the walls with trembling fingers, feeling the vibrations run up her arms. "It has not left her," she muttered. "The heart refuses to die. It hides where it can reach. It is alive in the walls because it must watch, because it remembers." Fear grew, spreading through the village like smoke. People avoided the council hall entirely, crossing to the other side of the square rather than walk past it. Sleep was uneasy. At night, the heartbeat seemed louder, echoing inside homes and wells, slipping into dreams. Those who tried to ignore it awoke in the middle of the night, sweat coating their skin, hearts racing in tandem with the pulse beneath the walls. The priest, desperate to reclaim control, declared a purification ritual. He spread salt and iron filings across the floor, reciting incantations meant to banish Amelie's spirit. But nothing changed. The heartbeat persisted, growing only more insistent, as if mocking him. Every attempt to silence it failed. It was patient, clever, alive. Then one night, a lantern-bearer heard something new. Beneath the steady pulse, a whisper threaded through the sound. At first it was faint, like wind stirring dry leaves. "I see you." The man froze, holding the lamp high. The words repeated, sharper this time. "I see you. I see all of you." Panic spread. The villagers claimed their own homes groaned with Amelie's presence, and some swore they saw the walls pulse outward slightly as if breathing. Others refused to speak, fearing their words might anger the heart. Meanwhile the earth itself seemed to respond. Roots under the council hall writhed faintly in the soil, small cracks forming along the foundation. Even the river nearby seemed to pick up the rhythm of the heart, the water slapping the banks in cadence. Nature itself obeyed the pulse that refused to die. Amelie's grandmother understood then that her granddaughter's life force had not just survived, it had multiplied. The stolen heart, separated from her body, had become a vessel, a weapon, and a messenger all at once. It remembered the betrayal and silently catalogued every fear, every guilt, every lie committed against it. One evening the stepmother dared approach the hall, clutching her cross and muttering prayers. As she neared the walls, the heartbeat quickened, thumping in a tempo that made her knees buckle. Her blood ran cold when a voice, unmistakably Amelie's, whispered from inside the cracks. "You took me from life. You will watch as it finds you." Terrified, she ran, tripping over roots that seemed to move with intent, falling face first into the dirt. The villagers rushed to help, but the stepmother screamed at them not to touch her. Her eyes reflected the flickering lanterns and the pulsing walls. A living, watching heart that could reach beyond its stone and timber prison. From that night onward, the council hall became a place no one dared enter. The heartbeat continued, a steady reminder that Amelie had not been silenced, that the act of cutting her heart out had not ended her life. It was a warning, a truth, and a ghost all in one, alive in the very walls that had witnessed her betrayal. And late one night, when the village slept and even the river lay still, the heartbeat quickened to a furious drum. From the walls, Amelie's voice rang clear for the first time. "Tonight I speak beyond the stones. Tonight the village will listen, or be swallowed by what they have done." Night fell like a heavy curtain over the village, and with it came a silence so thick it pressed against the ears. But beneath the quiet, inside the council hall, the heartbeat continued, a relentless drum that seemed to thrum through every stone and beam. The villagers lay in their huts, tossing and turning, dreams invaded by the rhythmic pulse. Some swore they could hear words hidden in the sound, soft and sharp at the same time, whispering their deepest fears. The first to act were the children. Small hands pressed against the cracks in the walls, feeling vibrations ripple through their fingertips. Their eyes were wide, unafraid, fascinated. "It's speaking to me," one whispered. "It knows everything I've done." Others nodded, trembling with the thrill of a secret they could not explain to adults. When they tried to tell their parents, the words caught in their throats, stifled by fear, disbelief, and the unnatural weight of the walls themselves. Even the adults could not ignore it for long. Farmers returning late from the fields reported hearing faint cries echoing from the hall. The sound was not human, yet it carried tones familiar and cruel, as if Amelie herself were recounting every moment of pain the villagers had inflicted. The stepmother, who had avoided the square for nights, woke drenched in sweat, muttering apologies to a voice no one else could hear. Her prayers went unanswered, replaced by the low thrum that seemed to seep into her bones. Amelie's grandmother, though frail, moved purposefully toward the hall. She had lived long enough to see the patterns of life and death, of power and betrayal. She pressed her hands against the plaster, feeling the heartbeat beneath her fingers. It was not just a pulse, it was a message, a living memory. It remembers everything, she murmured to herself. It speaks for those who cannot, and it will not rest until justice is done. That night, a storm brewed on the horizon, lightning flashing in jagged streaks that illuminated the hall and cast the villagers' shadows across the dirt paths. Rain began to fall, cold and heavy, drumming against the roofs, and the heartbeat inside the hall seemed to quicken in response, louder, more urgent. Windows rattled. The floorboards trembled as if the building itself had taken a living breath. A group of villagers, led by the priest, approached the council hall, carrying bundles of salt, iron, and sacred herbs meant to suppress spirits. They chanted incantations, swinging incense and sprinkling protective powders across the threshold. But the heartbeat did not falter. It rose above their cries, above the storm, vibrating through the ground so strongly that their knees buckled. The building groaned, small cracks widening as if the walls themselves were straining against an invisible force. Inside, the sound was more than a rhythm, it became a presence. Whispered words, fragmented but intelligible, slithered into minds. I see. I remember. I hear your fear. Villagers clutched their heads, stumbling backward. Livestock in nearby pens whinnied and squealed, chickens flew into the rain-soaked night, and dogs howled at a sound no human could produce. From the cracks in the wall, a faint blue light began to seep, illuminating the hall like moonlight captured inside stone. Shadows moved unnaturally, stretching and twisting as if the walls were alive. The villagers, terrified beyond reason, fled, leaving the priest standing alone. His chants faltered. Even the iron and salt could not quiet what had grown beyond their understanding. Amelie's grandmother stayed behind, crouched at the edge of the hall. She whispered words learned from long-vanished spirits, incantations not to banish but to communicate. The heartbeat responded, pulsing slower, then faster, like a conversation between two forces unseen. She pressed her ear to the walls and heard it clearly, a soft, melodic hum layered with low, resonant tones, carrying memories of betrayal, fear, and injustice. The next morning, villagers spoke in hushed tones. Windows of the council hall had shattered overnight, though no one saw lightning strike. The walls bore faint cracks that resembled veins, throbbing slightly as if the building itself had a pulse. Children returned cautiously, whispering about voices and songs, while adults avoided the square entirely. Even the priest seemed changed, silent and wary, aware that the heartbeat had shifted something fundamental. And in the stillness that followed, as dawn painted the village in pale gold, the council hall seemed to breathe. The heartbeat had not just survived the night, it had grown. Its rhythm carried a promise. Those who had wronged Amelie could no longer hide, and those who had feared her could no longer claim ignorance. The pulse was patient, waiting, relentless. When night fell again and the wind died to a hush, the villagers heard something new. The heartbeat throbbed in a deliberate pattern, a rhythm that spelled warning and truth. And from deep within the walls, Amelie's voice emerged, faint but unmistakable. Tonight I watch. Tonight you will hear me. Amelie's grandmother had watched the village descend into fear and chaos for weeks. Each night, she felt the heartbeat thrumming beneath the council hall, a constant reminder that her granddaughter had not truly left them. She knew the villagers could not comprehend what they had done. They were blinded by superstition and terror. But she understood, as only one who had lived through countless seasons of life and death could, that power like Amelie's did not simply vanish. It lingered, it remembered, and it demanded acknowledgement. In the dim light of her hut, she unrolled a worn mat and retrieved a small, carved box. Its wood was dark and slick with age, and the hinges creaked as she opened it. Inside lay powders of crushed herbs, fragments of bone polished smooth, vials of glimmering liquid, and pieces of iron etched with tiny symbols. These were the tools of an ancient practice, a secret kept for generations in their family. To awaken, to protect, to commune, she whispered. Each item had a name, a purpose, a memory woven into it. She traced her fingers over the powders and vials as if touching the past itself. The heartbeat inside the hall grew louder, more insistent, almost as if sensing her presence. She could feel it in her chest, a rhythmic echo that resonated with her own pulse. She knew what must be done. The villagers had taken Amelie's heart, yes, but they had not silenced her spirit. The heartbeat was a message, a warning, a living testament to injustice. And now it was her turn to act. She began mixing powders, murmuring incantations she had learned in secret. Each phrase was precise, delicate, a thread in a larger tapestry of ritual. The vials of liquid she poured into a shallow bowl reflected the flickering light of the hearth, shimmering as though the liquid itself recognized Amelie's heartbeat. With each motion, the grandmother whispered guidance to the spirit she had nurtured, calling her back not to vengeance, but to justice and remembrance. Meanwhile, the village fell deeper into fear. Doors were bolted, windows shuttered. Livestock refused to enter their pens. Children whispered of shadows that moved against the walls, shapes too fluid and alive to be mere trickery. The priest wandered the streets, mumbling prayers that no longer seemed to carry authority. Even the stepmother, once confident in her safety, spent nights awake, staring at her walls as if expecting them to rise and consume her. The grandmother knew that fear alone would not contain the heart. She also knew the villagers would not willingly confess or make amends. Their arrogance and ignorance had forced Amelie into the earth, and now the earth itself, through the heartbeat, would not relent. She prepared a final tool, a small mirror etched with runes, meant to capture and focus Amelie's energy, bridging the living and the unseen. The heart, she hoped, could be guided back toward clarity and purpose, but she also knew it could be overwhelming, uncontrollable if mishandled. As the night deepened, she walked to the council hall, carrying her box and the mirror. The heartbeat resonated through the ground, vibrating her steps, guiding her path. The doors, long unused and locked, opened with a creak as if recognizing her hand. Inside, the walls pulsed faintly blue, veins of light weaving through the cracks. The grandmother set the mirror on the floor, placing powders and liquids around it in a circle. She began to chant, a soft rhythm to match the heartbeat, coaxing it, calling it, speaking to the soul of Amelie within the walls. From within, the heartbeat responded, stronger, clearer, pulsing in harmony with the grandmother's words. It was not violent or wrathful, not yet, but patient and watchful, like a tide waiting to surge. A faint whisper rose from the walls, melodic and soft, threaded with sorrow and remembrance. I hear you. I feel you. I wait. Outside, the villagers noticed something strange. The wind had stopped entirely. The river that flowed past the village grew unnaturally still, reflecting the moon like a sheet of glass. The animals were silent. And from the cracks in the council hall, faint pulses of blue light shimmered through the walls, so vivid that even the most fearful could not look away. The grandmother continued, guiding the heartbeat with her words, aligning her chants to the rhythm of the pulse. It was delicate work. One misstep could anger the spirit, could cause it to lash out on the villagers who had harmed her. But she pressed on, knowing this was the only way to prevent further chaos. The air seemed to thrum in time with the heartbeat, every breath filled with the energy of life and the promise of reckoning. By midnight, a sound joined the heartbeat, a soft, melodic whisper, forming words that were just perceptible. I see them. I remember. I wait. The grandmother nodded, her eyes reflecting the pulse in the walls, understanding that Amelie's spirit was growing stronger, becoming aware of its power. The villagers would soon have to face more than fear. They would have to face truth, witnessed by the heartbeat that no wall could contain. The grandmother straightened, hands trembling but steady. She looked at the circle she had made and spoke to Amelie as if she could hear her directly. You are not alone. I am here. We will guide you. But you must listen, and the village will soon learn that what they buried cannot be silenced. The walls throbbed, responding with a slow, deliberate pulse. The heartbeat had become a voice, a force, a living reminder that the past could not remain hidden. And as the grandmother left the council hall, the rhythm followed her, echoing into the streets, reaching the ears of those who had caused Amelie harm. They could no longer pretend to be ignorant. That night, the village awoke to an uneasy wind, the faint glow of the council hall casting long shadows. And deep within the walls, Amelie's heartbeat spoke with purpose, growing louder, insistent, patient, waiting for the reckoning to come. The following days brought unease that spread through the village like wildfire. Crops began to wither overnight in some fields, while in others stalks grew twisted and stunted. Livestock refused to enter their pens, bleeding in terror at nothing visible. Doors and windows, once secure, rattled and shook even when the wind was absent. The villagers whispered that Amelie's spirit had grown beyond the council hall, inhabiting walls, earth, and stone alike. Fear gripped every household. Parents hid their children, muttering prayers they barely understood. The stepmother spent days locked inside her hut, murmuring apologies to a voice only she could hear. Her skin prickled with unease, as though invisible eyes followed her every step. The priest, humbled and terrified, abandoned the council hall and wandered the village muttering protective incantations, his hands shaking as he sprinkled salt and iron along the thresholds. Yet nothing could silence the heartbeat. It had become more than a pulse. It was a presence, a judgment, a living force that touched the foundations of the village itself. The council hall no longer belonged to the villagers. It belonged to Amelie. The stones and timbers seemed to shift subtly, vibrating in harmony with her rhythm. Those who dared to enter were met with the feeling of eyes on their skin, a heartbeat that thumped not only through the floor but through their very bones. Amelie's grandmother, aware of the growing power, knew she had to act cautiously. She had guided the heart once, but it now pulsed with autonomy. She approached the hall, carrying her box of ritual tools, and whispered to the heartbeat, reminding it of its purpose: to demand acknowledgement, to reveal truth, but not to destroy without cause. The heart responded with a slow, deliberate pulse, almost approvingly, yet tinged with the memory of pain and betrayal. Strange phenomena multiplied in the village. Walls began to sweat faint traces of water even in the absence of rain. Stone fences developed subtle cracks that pulsed in rhythm with the heartbeat. Nightly, a soft glow seeped from the cracks in the council hall, illuminating streets and alleys like ghostly lanterns. Children reported seeing shapes, glimpses of Amelie's form within the walls, a translucent figure whose eyes glimmered like moonlight on water. Tension among the villagers reached a boiling point. The elders convened in secret, debating how to contain the force they had unleashed. Some argued for destroying the council hall entirely. Others feared that any harm done to the building would provoke Amelie further. Meanwhile, the heartbeat throbbed ever louder, its rhythm growing more insistent, warning them that their reckoning was imminent. One night, the stepmother, unable to resist her fear, approached the council hall under cover of darkness. She pressed her trembling hands to the outer wall, pleading softly for mercy. The heartbeat accelerated, responding to her guilt and terror. Shadows shifted across the stone, forming the faint outline of a human hand, reaching from within. She screamed and stumbled backward, her cries echoing in the empty square. The grandmother watched silently, understanding that the spirit was testing, probing, and learning. Amelie's heart, once severed and taken, had grown into a force that could feel, remember, and judge. Its pulse carried memory of every slight, every betrayal, every whispered accusation, and its presence demanded reckoning. By dawn, the village lay in tense anticipation. The river that wound through the outskirts seemed restless, its waters churning as if aware of the heartbeat's will. Trees swayed without wind, and the animals shivered in the early light. Even the stones of the council hall had begun to glow faintly, veins of blue and silver weaving through the cracks. Amelie's grandmother stepped inside, tracing the pulse with careful hands, whispering incantations to focus the spirit. The heart throbbed stronger, and for a moment, it seemed almost human, a living memory of pain and injustice. The walls vibrated, stones shifted, and a low hum of energy filled the hall, resonating with every fiber of the village. Then the heartbeat changed. It became sharper, more precise. From the walls came whispers and voices that mimicked those who had accused and betrayed Amelie. The villagers heard their own words of fear and hatred repeated back to them, layered over a steady, relentless drum. The sound was undeniable. They had tried to bury life, to sever love, to destroy justice, and now the village itself remembered their sins. No one could remain calm. Doors slammed, fires were extinguished, and even the priest's voice trembled as he attempted prayers. The heartbeat, now powerful and commanding, seemed to weave through the village, touching stone, wood, and flesh alike. Fear, guilt, and awe mingled into one heavy presence that refused to be ignored. Amelie's grandmother knelt, guiding the spirit with her voice, murmuring, "You are not vengeance. You are truth. You are life preserved, even in blood and stone." The heartbeat responded with a slow, approving pulse, steady but insistent. It was awakening fully, growing beyond the walls, preparing to reveal the depth of the village's betrayal. Outside, shadows lengthened unnaturally, as if the earth itself leaned toward the council hall. And from deep within, Amelie's voice rose for the first time in days, weaving through the heartbeat. "You thought you could bury me, silence me, but I have become the memory you cannot escape. The village will learn what hearts cannot hide." The villagers understood then that the storm had already begun, not of rain but of revelation. The heartbeat would not stop. It would not relent. And soon, every soul that had turned against Amelie would face the truth, carried relentlessly through the pulse that had grown stronger than stone. By the time the full moon rose high over the village, the heartbeat had grown into something undeniable. It no longer throbbed solely within the walls of the council hall. It seemed to pulse through the earth itself, reaching every home, every path, every stone. Crops shivered in the windless night, animals crouched low to the ground, and the river that cut through the village rippled in unnatural patterns. The villagers whispered that Amelie had returned, not merely as a spirit, but as a force that could no longer be contained. Inside the council hall, her grandmother moved carefully, guiding the rhythm of the heartbeat with words she had whispered for generations. Powders, vials, and charms glimmered in the flickering candlelight, but it was no longer her alone speaking to the heart. Amelie's essence had grown stronger, filling the space with a presence that was both familiar and terrifying. A faint form began to materialize within the blue glow of the walls, shimmering like heat over a desert, flickering between flesh and light. The villagers outside could not ignore the strange occurrences. Windows rattled without wind. Roofs groaned, and the earth beneath the village trembled faintly. Shadows stretched unnaturally, coiling along walls and across the dirt paths. Children whispered to one another about glimpses of Amelie, her hair flowing like smoke, eyes that gleamed with both sorrow and rage, a figure that was more presence than body. Her grandmother's voice guided the spirit gently, murmuring instructions to shape the power, to contain the anger and focus it on truth rather than destruction. Amelie's heartbeat pulsed stronger in response, vibrating through every beam and stone, echoing into the night. She had learned control, but she had not forgotten the pain and betrayal that had brought her to this point. The villagers who had harmed her were about to face consequences, but she also understood that mercy must be measured, lest the innocent suffer alongside the guilty. In the village square, the first to feel her presence directly were those most guilty: her father, the stepmother, and the council elders. Their dreams had been haunted for weeks, but now the waking world mirrored that terror. When they stepped outside, they felt it first in their bones. The pulse of Amelie's heart, vibrating beneath the earth, through their feet, up their spines. Every step they took matched the rhythm, as if they were being drawn toward the council hall, toward her. Amelie's form began to solidify further. Her skin glimmered faintly, pale and luminescent, patterned like moonlight on water. Her eyes, once full of human sorrow, now carried the depth of the ocean, endless and patient but capable of sudden fury. Her hair rippled like living smoke, curling and twisting in the air even when the wind was still. She stepped from the shadows of the hall into the open square, and the villagers fell silent. Even the animals paused, sensing the presence of something greater than mortal life. The guilty staggered back, hands raised in desperate gestures, mouths moving in words of denial or pleading, but Amelie's gaze was unwavering. Her heartbeat, still echoing from the walls and now from her very being, demanded acknowledgement. She spoke, and the villagers realized that the voice was not carried by lips alone. It resonated in their bones, threading through their minds. "You took what was mine. You thought death would silence me, but life persists where injustice has been done." Her grandmother stayed at the edge of the square, guiding the energy that radiated from Amelie. She whispered again, reminding her granddaughter of restraint and purpose. Amelie's presence was overwhelming, but she listened. Her power extended beyond the council hall, reaching into the village streets, touching those who were innocent with only the faintest tremor of the heartbeat, while pressing the guilty with the full weight of her wrath. The villagers watched in awe and terror as Amelie raised her hands, and the earth itself seemed to obey. The ground rippled beneath their feet. Stones shifted, aligning in patterns that mirrored the rhythm of her pulse. Water from the nearby river seeped up through cracks in the earth, spiraling toward her like a living ribbon, responding to her call. Those who had wronged her felt their hearts pound in time with hers, a reminder that their actions had consequences beyond their understanding. Amelie's form shifted again, her body merging with the shimmering pulses that had long inhabited the walls. She was no longer entirely human. She was essence, heartbeat, memory, and life made tangible. Yet despite this transformation, she retained the consciousness, the intelligence, and the purpose that had driven her in life. She could now move unseen through the village, listening to the whispers of guilt and fear, guiding the energy of the heartbeat with precision and intent. As dawn approached, the villagers dared not sleep. The pulse of Amelie's heartbeat had become a tangible presence in the air, a rhythm that demanded attention. Windows remained shuttered, doors locked, and even the livestock huddled in corners, unwilling to stray too close to the council hall. The stepmother trembled in her hut, clutching her chest as the heartbeat reached her ears, pulling at memories she wished she could forget. The grandmother's words kept the spirit focused, but she knew it would not be long before Amelie took more decisive action. Her gaze swept over the village, eyes glowing faintly in the pre-dawn light. The pulse that had begun in stolen walls had now become part of her, and through it she would bring reckoning. The heartbeat was not merely a warning anymore, it was a force that could shape reality itself. By the time the sun rose, casting pale gold over trembling roofs, Amelie stood fully in her form of water and flesh, the heartbeat resonating throughout the village. Those who had harmed her were trapped in a silent, suffocating awareness of their guilt. Innocence felt only the gentle rhythm, a reminder of protection. And as she lifted her head, eyes sweeping across the village, Amelie spoke for the first time aloud since her return, her voice a chorus of heartbeat and spirit. "I am here. I am alive. And I will be heard." The villagers understood in that moment that the days of hiding from the truth were over. Amelie's power, born from betrayal and nurtured by patience, had returned fully, and the pulse that began in stolen walls now radiated from her, demanding recognition, remembrance, and reckoning. The heartbeat of Amelie had become unstoppable, and the village, whether ready or not, would soon feel its full force. The village could no longer ignore the signs. The council hall, once the seat of mundane governance, had become a monument to fear and memory. The heartbeat throbbed louder each night, and with it came the whispers, sometimes gentle, sometimes sharp, always accusing. No villager could sleep without hearing it, and the guilty felt it press against their chests like a living weight. Amelie's return was no longer a rumor, it was an undeniable presence, pulsing through stone, wood, and earth. Her grandmother worked tirelessly, guiding Amelie's spirit through rituals that required delicate balance. She sprinkled powders, traced symbols in iron, and murmured incantations that both calmed and focused the heartbeat. The energy within the council hall was immense, and at times she feared that Amelie's wrath, if left unchecked, could engulf the entire village. Yet the heartbeat, pulsing steadily now, had a purpose. It sought justice, not indiscriminate destruction. The guilty felt it immediately. Her father, once indifferent to the pain he had caused, now trembled when he stepped into the square. The stepmother, who had poured boiling water on Amelie years ago, huddled in her hut, eyes wide with terror as if the walls themselves were watching her. Council elders whispered prayers into the wind, but the heartbeat ignored them, thumping louder with every lie or denial spoken aloud. Amelie's presence in the square was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Her form shimmered between flesh and light, hair like rippling smoke, eyes like deep pools that reflected not just fear but the truth of every heart. Each pulse from her being seemed to carry memory, accusation, and intent, radiating outward like waves from a stone thrown into a pond. She moved slowly among the villagers, each step sending subtle tremors through the ground. Those who were innocent felt only a faint, tingling rhythm, a reminder that life continued and justice could be tempered with mercy. The guilty, however, felt the pulse deep within their bones, an unrelenting drum that forced them to confront the weight of every betrayal, every act of cruelty they had committed. The stepmother's fear became physical. Her tongue blistered at the mention of Amelie's name, her skin itched as though the very earth she had wronged was seeking retribution. She tried to flee, but the heartbeat seemed to pull her back, tugging at her chest, her limbs, her mind. She fell to her knees, eyes wide as Amelie's gaze bore into her, unwavering and unyielding. Her father's reaction was no less severe. The pulse seemed to align with the rhythm of his heart, amplifying every pang of guilt he had long suppressed. He shouted, demanded explanations, and offered goats, fish, and gold, even children, yet Amelie's presence remained calm but resolute. The heartbeat throbbed in tandem with his own, forcing him to feel the pain he had inflicted, the betrayal he had caused. The grandmother guided Amelie's focus carefully, reminding her granddaughter that restraint was as important as power. Amelie's spirit had grown strong, capable of commanding stone, wood, and blood, yet her grandmother knew that absolute fury could destroy the innocent along with the guilty. So she murmured, tracing protective symbols in the dust and iron powders, her voice steady amidst the rhythm of the heart. "Judge, but do not destroy. Show truth, not ruin. Let them see what they have done." The villagers began to understand that this was no ordinary haunting. The heartbeat was judgment itself, relentless, patient, and precise. Each pulse reminded them that life and death were intertwined, that injustice left marks deeper than the eye could see. The council hall vibrated, windows rattling, doors shaking, as if the building itself had become Amelie's voice, her heartbeat, her warning. At the height of night, Amelie spoke again, her voice layered with the pulse of the heartbeat. You took my life, my body, my voice. You buried me in earth and in secrecy. But you cannot hide from what lives. Her words resonated through the village, through the walls, through every ear that dared listen. Every whisper of denial, every attempt at deflection, fell flat against the rhythm of her pulse. Even those who had done no wrong felt the power, a mix of awe and fear, and understood that what had been taken could not remain silent. The heartbeat was no longer merely a warning, it was an assertion of existence, a reminder that the cost of betrayal was eternal memory. By dawn the villagers were changed. Their sleep had been haunted, their hearts heavy, and their understanding deepened. Amelie's heartbeat continued to pulse, steady now, guiding the village toward acknowledgement and truth. The stepmother's tongue still burned, her father still shivered, and the council elders trembled before the power they had unleashed. Yet a calm threaded through the chaos, a recognition that the judgment was not arbitrary, that justice could be measured, and that the heartbeat, though relentless, had a rhythm that was deliberate, purposeful. Amelie remained in the square, watching, waiting, her presence a living testament to survival, memory, and truth. The heartbeat, now synchronized with her very being, carried a message far beyond the walls of the council hall. Betrayal leaves a mark that no stone can hide, no wall can contain, and no time can erase. That night, as the village held its breath, the heartbeat throbbed in a steady, commanding rhythm, filling the air with the certainty that Amelie's reckoning had only just begun. The stones, the earth, and the air themselves seemed to hum in her presence, carrying the unspoken warning to all who dared deny the truth. The days following Amelie's resurgence were heavy with tension. The villagers no longer walked freely, every step was cautious, every glance furtive. Even the bravest avoided the council hall, whose walls now pulsed faintly with the rhythm of her heartbeat. Shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should, and the faint blue glow that seeped from cracks in the stones marked the presence of something beyond comprehension. Inside the hall, Amelie's essence moved like water caught in a current, slipping between walls, floorboards, and beams. She could feel the memory of every act committed against her. The boiling water, the whispered lies, the betrayal of those she had once called family. Each pulse of the heartbeat carried not just accusation but also remembrance. She had become a part of the very architecture, a living spirit in stone and mortar, bound to the place where her pain had been sealed away. Her grandmother, aware of the immense power that now radiated through the hall, continued her careful rituals. She whispered incantations to direct the heartbeat, to give Amelie control over the force that coursed through the village. She traced symbols with her fingers in iron dust, chanting softly, urging the spirit to reveal truths, not wreak havoc indiscriminately. With each word, the pulse responded, resonating more clearly, vibrating through the ground and into the hearts of those who had wronged Amelie. Outside, the guilty could feel the pressure mounting. The stepmother's tongue blistered as she muttered prayers, her skin crawling as if invisible hands had brushed across her. Her father shivered uncontrollably, the pulse of Amelie's heartbeat echoing through his chest, amplifying every pang of guilt he had long ignored. Even the council elders, who had once prided themselves on authority and wisdom, found their knees trembling under the weight of the judgment flowing through the village. Amelie's presence in the square became more tangible with each passing night. Her form shimmered between flesh and spectral light, hair flowing like smoke, eyes deep as oceans reflecting both fury and sorrow. The villagers felt her gaze upon them even without seeing her fully. Some stumbled backward in fear, others fell to their knees, trembling as the rhythm of the heartbeat made them confront memories they had tried to bury. The heartbeat pulsed through the walls, vibrating so strongly that the building itself seemed alive. Beams shifted slightly, stones hummed in resonance, and dust trembled along the floorboards. From deep within, Amelie's voice emerged, threaded into the rhythm, repeating the accusations of the guilty. You took my life, my voice, my spirit. You cannot hide from what lives. Her words spread through the village, lingering in the air and embedding themselves in the minds of those who had harmed her. Even those who had been innocent could not escape the intensity of the presence. They felt the weight of memory and the inevitability of truth pressing down. The heartbeat did not punish them, but it reminded them. They were witnesses, living alongside a force that refused to be silenced. Children whispered of Amelie's figure moving like water through walls, her eyes glimmering with light that carried both warning and protection. One night, the stepmother, in desperation, approached the council hall. She pressed trembling hands to the outer walls, begging for mercy. The heartbeat quickened in response, and the walls seemed to pulse under her touch, as if Amelie herself were acknowledging the plea. Shadows shifted inside the hall, forming faint outlines that mirrored human hands reaching outward. She fell back with a scream, realizing that the power she had ignored or mocked was no longer distant. It was immediate, intimate, inescapable. Her father, observing from a distance, felt the pulse tug at his chest with unrelenting insistence. He shouted apologies, offered gifts, even children, but the heartbeat ignored mere gestures. It demanded acknowledgement, reckoning, and understanding. The stones, beams, and dust carried Amelie's message with a precision that no human could match. Every lie, every denial, every attempt to escape the truth only amplified the rhythm that connected the living to the memory she embodied. Amelie's grandmother guided the spirit patiently, whispering, "Judge with purpose. Make them see what they have done. Let the walls speak the truth, but spare those who remain innocent." The heartbeat responded with a measured rhythm, steadying yet persistent, and for the first time, a faint sense of calm threaded through the chaos. The guilty were confronted, the innocent protected, and the pulse of Amelie's spirit wove its presence through the village in a careful, deliberate balance. By dawn the villagers were changed. Fear lingered, yes, but so did recognition. They had witnessed a power beyond understanding, a living heartbeat that carried memory, judgment, and truth. The council hall no longer belonged to man alone. It belonged to Amelie, to the spirit that had once been buried and forgotten, now alive in stone, wood, and mortar. As sunlight touched the village, the heartbeat settled into a slower, deliberate rhythm. Amelie's presence remained, subtle yet undeniable, a constant reminder that life, even in death, remembers. And in the quiet, the villagers realized that the walls themselves now spoke, and that every pulse of that heartbeat carried a message none of them could ignore. The village awoke to a tension so thick it pressed against the chest. Even the birds seemed to pause mid-flight, sensing that the heartbeat of Amelie's spirit had grown beyond the walls, beyond the council hall, and into every corner of their lives. The guilty were the first to feel it. The stepmother, her father, the elders, their hearts synchronized unwillingly with a rhythm that was not their own, a pulse that carried memory, accusation, and judgment. Amelie's presence had become tangible in the square. Her form shimmered like water caught in moonlight, shifting between solid and ethereal, hair flowing like smoke curling in the windless night. Her eyes, deep as ocean trenches, scanned the village, settling on those who had betrayed her. Every step she took was accompanied by a vibration through the earth, a pulse that echoed in the guilty, making their knees buckle and their voices falter. The villagers begged for mercy, offering gifts, goats, fish, even children, but the heartbeat responded only to truth, not bribes. Amelie's grandmother stood aside, murmuring guidance, ensuring that the energy of the heartbeat did not spill into indiscriminate wrath. The pulse throbbed in tandem with Amelie's judgment, touching only those who had acted in betrayal while leaving the innocent with a faint, tremulous reminder that they were witnesses, not perpetrators. Her father cried out, his voice cracking, "You are no daughter of mine." The words reverberated against stone and wood, shaking the air. Amelie's heartbeat accelerated, a warning pulse that pressed against his chest and forced him to feel every memory he had tried to bury. She hovered, not yet striking, but letting the rhythm of her presence communicate the weight of his betrayal. Her eyes, now glowing faintly, scanned the crowd of villagers. One by one she named them, her voice harmonizing with the pulse. Those who had conspired against her, those who had hidden the truth, those who had contributed to her suffering. With every name, the ground trembled subtly, the heartbeat in the walls thumped in sync, and the guilty were drawn toward the council hall, unable to resist the force that demanded acknowledgement. The stepmother's scream pierced the night as her tongue burned, blistered by the very salt she had once used in cruelty. Her father shook violently, each pulse of the heartbeat pressing like a stone against his chest. Council elders swayed, clutching beams for support, their prayers insufficient to contain the judgment. Even villagers who had tried to hide their fear could feel it, a rhythmic reminder that the past could not be ignored. Amelie's grandmother guided the energy with careful hands, chanting incantations to shape the judgment without spilling it beyond necessity. The heartbeat responded, rising and falling with deliberate precision. Stones hummed, dust shivered, and the walls of the hall seemed to breathe along with the rhythm, echoing every act of betrayal back to those who had caused it. The villagers watched in awe and terror as Amelie's form became more defined. Her hair rippled like waves, her eyes glimmered with unearthly light, and her voice, layered with the pulse of her heartbeat, carried to every corner of the village. "You thought burying me would silence what is living. You thought hiding my heart would erase what is eternal. But truth is a rhythm you cannot escape." By nightfall, the guilty were gathered near the council hall, each forced to confront the consequences of their deeds. The heartbeat pulsed stronger, each vibration a reminder of the life they had tried to suppress. The innocent remained unharmed, though they could not ignore the awe-inspiring power surrounding them. Children whispered among themselves, wide-eyed, sensing that the spirit of Amelie had become a living force within the village itself. Amelie's gaze swept over her father one last time, steady and unwavering. The pulse pressed against him like the tide against rocks, relentless yet measured. She spoke softly, her voice a resonance of heartbeat and spirit. "I am no longer a daughter you can control. I'm not the girl you buried. I am the rhythm of justice, the echo of memory, and the force that remembers every wrong." The village fell silent. The guilty trembled, the innocent watched with cautious awe, and the heartbeat, once hidden within walls, now thrummed openly, a living testament to the reckoning that had come. Every stone, every beam, every grain of dust carried the rhythm, ensuring that no one would forget the consequences of betrayal, and that the voice of Amelie, though once buried, would resonate forever. Dawn broke over the village with an eerie stillness. The guilty had been confronted, their bodies shaken by the pulse of Amelie's spirit, their minds pressed by the weight of every betrayal. Some had confessed, some had fallen silent in horror, but all had been forced to reckon with the truth. The innocent remained untouched, though their hearts carried the memory of the night's events, a rhythm they would never forget. Amelie lingered on the edge of the council hall, her form a delicate balance of flesh, light, and water. Her eyes shimmered with the depth of the ocean, reflecting both sorrow and triumph. She could not remain among the villagers, yet she could not vanish completely. She was a presence now, part of the walls, the earth, and the heartbeat that had come to define the village. Her grandmother watched silently, knowing the power had reached its fullest expression, a culmination of justice, memory, and survival. The villagers moved cautiously around her, stepping lightly, speaking softly. Some dared to whisper her name, others avoided it entirely. Children played at a distance, mimicking her presence in their imagination, and elders recounted the tale in hushed tones, warning that betrayal, cruelty, and deceit had consequences that could last generations. Amelie's spirit began to shift, dissolving slowly into a mist that shimmered like water in sunlight. The heartbeat, now steady and eternal, pulsed faintly through the walls, the earth, and the air. Though her form faded from sight, the rhythm remained, a living memory of all that had transpired, echoing the lessons of justice and the power of a spirit wronged yet unbroken. From time to time, children reported hearing a soft pulse beneath the floors, a heartbeat that reminded them of the story of Amelie, the girl whose heart had been taken but refused to die. Villagers noticed that grains of salt, once sprinkled carelessly, would dissolve into tiny tears, as though carrying a whisper from the spirit herself. And sometimes, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the village settled into quiet, a voice could be heard, faint, almost indistinguishable, carried on the wind as if the heartbeat itself spoke. "I was the price you paid. I was the witness you tried to silence. Remember me and remember what betrayal costs." The council hall remained no longer merely a building, but a testament to the persistence of life, memory, and justice. Walls vibrated faintly with Amelie's pulse, stones hummed with the echo of her heart, and the village had learned that some spirits cannot be buried, some truths cannot be hidden, and some voices, though taken, will continue to cry, insist, and remind those who remain. In the end, Amelie's presence became both legend and warning, a rhythm that would echo through the village forever. Children would tell stories of the girl whose heart beat beyond death, and elders would nod in solemn remembrance. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the wind was right and the grains of salt dissolved in the sun, the faintest heartbeat could still be felt, a reminder that she had lived, she had suffered, and she had returned to ensure that justice, once denied, would never be forgotten.